Welcome to the HR Chat Show, one of the world's most downloaded and shared podcasts designed for HR pros, talent execs, tech enthusiasts, and business leaders. For hundreds more episodes and what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit hrgazette.com.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode, another special episode. I am so pleased to be joined today by Matt Reimer, a talent acquisition executive and entrepreneur with over 20 years of TA experience in two of the largest health systems in the United States. He has spent the last 2.5 years at Trinity Health. Before that, he spent 17 years at University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. In his time at both organizations, Matt has built and led teams across the entire recruitment function, from sourcers and recruiters to marketing and operations. His early career as a recruiter in technology has led to a passion for software development and a focus on enabling TA teams through smart processes and technology deployments. When Matt is not working in TA or running his podcast, he's spending time with his wife and 2 girls, or he can be found pedaling his road bike or hiking the nearest mountain. Thanks for joining me, Matt. Please introduce yourself to the folks. Tell
Keirsten,
them anything I missed.
That's an amazing intro there. And thanks for having me on your show. Excited to be here today and excited to get to meet you at TA Week. It was a good event and I was happy to be a part of it. So now just happy to be here.
You presented on day 3 of TA Week.
Mm-hmm.
That was the Talent Sourcing Strategies Day. Can you just give us an overview of your session and what you mean by employee-powered hiring?
Yeah, no, good question. We the presentation that I gave is one that really from a case study perspective, came out of Trinity Health, where I spent 3 years at, and still one of, now that I'm at Rogue Hire, one of our largest clients. And it was really, focused around overhauling our employee referral program, really from top to bottom. And so when we talk about employee-powered hiring, really what we're talking about is, as it sounds, us talent acquisition, really finding unique, novel, but then simple ways at some level to empower, in Trinity's case, our 120,000 employees, to help us with recruitment, to help us with hiring, and so that's what we mean by employee-powered hiring.
Awesome. So you talked about employee power hiring from the employee referral program perspective.
Yep.
What would you say are the key components of an effective ERP?
Yeah, and at Trinity, for example, we're on a journey to be an elite, or to be more than an effective, run an effective employee referral program. But I think there's a couple of core foundation pieces of an effective ERP. Number one is really alignment, and not only strategically but culturally from the top, right? Like, hey, are we truly behind empowering our employees to evangelize and then recruit into our organization, and so what you'll generally find is that organizations with the best, strongest cultures also have a strong ERP. And so it kind of starts from that top down tone that the leaders set, from a culture perspective. Once you kind of have that foundation laid, from my vantage point, there's a couple of things that really, enable that to blossom. Number one is, clear and consistent policy, right? And so at Trinity, one of the things that we spent a lot of time on was getting that first generation of our revamped policy put together and strengthening that. So it is very clear to everyone what the rules of engagement are around the ERP. Not only what the rules of engagement are, but what are the rewards? What's in it for me? Right? What's in it for me participating in the referral program? One of the biggest issues that most organizations have Large organizations they have this black hole, phenomenon, meaning like, hey, I apply to the organization and I never get, any love back. I never hear back, right? And that's one of the things that within any high performing referral program you have to eradicate, right? Which is those feedback loops and the understanding of, hey, when me, your employee, provides you a referral, I know where it's at in time and space. I have a good sense of what's going on with it, and whether or not the person gets hired or they get dispositioned out, I'm kind of in the loop, right? And so those are some key factors, on the outward experience. The last thing I'd say is, the recruiter is a key stakeholder. HR is a key stakeholder in this process, and a lot of times, what you'll find is that due to the inefficiency, the tracking, the payout cycles, just trying to administer it, it doesn't get prioritized within HR and TA. And so, I think the last thing that I would focus in on is clean process, and then enabled by technology. I mean, we live in an era here where there's a ton of automation, options in our tech stack, and, smart automation of pieces of this process, specifically, the payout cycles, for example, the administration of some of the policy. In my opinion, as we move forward, is an absolute must on these large programs. Hey, if you're a smaller size entity where, I've got 1,000 employees or I've got 500 employees, you probably could administer that off a spreadsheet and get away with it. But, at 120,000 employee organization, heck, even a 5,000 employee organization, you need some scale to make sure that you're not allowing things to kind of fall through the cracks. So I don't know if that's kind of what you're looking for, but that's kind of how I view it.
Thanks for tuning in to the HRchat podcast. If you're enjoying this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. And now, back to the conversation.
We always framed employee referral programs as a benefit for employees, but hearing you talk, there are clear benefits for organizations to have an employee referral program. In your experience, what have been, one or two of those top benefits for employers to run effective employee referral programs?
Yeah, I think, from a talent acquisition perspective, the first thing that comes to mind is just sourcing at scale, right? And so and I'll use the healthcare analogy, just because it's where I, hang out and play, on a day-to-day basis. But, the reality is that, we don't have enough sourcing talent in most of our talent acquisition operations. And so we can find a way to inspire our employees. On average, in a high functioning referral program, an employee that's engaged will refer you three unique referrals annually. And that's just on average. You'll obviously have folks that are, referring much, much more. You'll have folks that are referring much, much less. But on average, that's what you see. And so not only quantity is value, but then also quality of those referrals generally are higher, right? These are people, your employees that understand your culture really well. They understand your mission, your vision, values. And, I think at some level, all of us, if we're going to put our name to somebody, wants to make sure that that's somebody that we would want to work with on a day-to-day basis. So I think quantity on sourcing is a benefit back to the organization. Quality is certainly a benefit back to the organization. And then depending upon how much you actually invest in your program, it also could be cost, right? And so when you think about the amount of money that we spend out on places like Indeed, right? When we're all trying to wean ourselves off of Indeed, depending upon how you structure your incentives and your cash outlays, you actually could get down to a more competitive cost per hire off of your referral program. And so, I think it strikes on what most organizations, look for from a hard dollar ROI. I think the other benefit that is a little bit softer, but in many organizations, I think it's important. It's engagement, right? And so it's another way to engage our employees. It's another reason for us to have ongoing conversations with our our employees. We had talked a little bit about at TA Week just about how important it is to get the ERGs together on this initiative. And so, like, if you have an initiative, in flight inside of your organization, which most organizations do, to become more diverse. Well, hey, this is a mechanism that we all can rally behind and find a way to bring more diverse talent to an organization. So I think there's also some very, some very cultural benefits to having a thriving employee referral, organization. One thing that I've talked about in the past is this idea of willingness to refer. And if you've got an organization of employees that are not willing to refer talent into your organization, it's telling you something. And then the reverse holds true as well. If you've got an organization that's highly willing to refer talent, that's telling you something as well. So I think there's some good benefits, kind of in that retention and engagement bucket as well.
Awesome benefits. And that leads me to my next question.
Sure.
In your experience, why do you think organizations aren't investing more resources, whether it be money and or these types of robust programs into ERPs when the data shows that they have a higher ROI than other recruitment sources do?
Yeah, it's a good question. We run at Rogue Hire our annual benchmarking study. So we study 95 health systems from across the U.S. And one of those that we look at is percent of hire from referrals. And you see at median, in essence, 30% of hires coming from referrals in an elite class. An organization that really is an elite performing organization, is getting 40, 45, maybe even upwards of 50% of their hires from referrals. So your question is like, hey, what's going on with the other end of that? Organizations that are only maybe getting 5%, 10% maybe of their external hires from referrals. Why are they not investing in that? I believe it comes down to a couple of things. Number one is that maybe the organization itself is not culturally mature, not culturally where it needs to be. And so it's just not something that it is focused upon because they've got other things culturally that they're working on, right? And the reality is even if they had invested in it, even if they had put more money into it, if culturally it wasn't right, their employees still aren't going to refer into their organization. And so I think there's a little bit of an organizational dynamic versus an organization, right, that maybe doesn't even have a program, but is a thriving culture. They're referring talent into their organization regardless. Like, hey, you have got to come work here, Keirsten. This place is awesome. I want to find you a way to come work, with me. So I think that's one thing. I think the other thing is that it's not a shiny penny. We've been talking about referrals for a long, long time. It is a tried and true program if you invest time and energy into it, but it's not a shiny penny. It's not the latest and greatest, right? There's dynamics within the referral program that I think are shiny. How people are and technology that's being used. We use an app called Aaron that automates a ton of our process, that gives a mobile app accessibility into our clinical providers. So I think there's shininess within it, but the idea of it is not necessarily a new idea. And so I think it's often overlooked, right? And so I think those are a couple of things that maybe come to mind. I think maybe the last thing is that, like, maybe when people think about referral programs, they think about, oh man, I've got to spend thousands of dollars that I don't have, right? I got to give these big bonuses, right? And the reality is that you don't always need to do that. I think maybe for some hard to fills, there could be some intriguing incentives, but what people want is recognition for their effort. And, I think on a modest budget, you can pull together unique ways using points and prizes to incent your organization correctly. And so I think sometimes people think about it, just from like this perspective of, hey, I got to give away a $5,000 bonus, or hey, I got to give away just to have a referral program. And I think that's a misnomer.
Those are great points again, and things that organizations can think about when they are looking to redesign their ERPs.
Yeah,
I want to go back to this notion of percentages because you
sure,
you are speaking in relatable and in terms and data, proven data points.
sure.
So thinking about Rogue Hire and what you're doing there with their employee referral program,
Mhm.
you've set what some would label an aggressive goal of
Sure.
getting 50% of your hires from employee referrals.
Yep.
Was it difficult to get buy-in from leadership? And what advice do you have for other TA leaders who want to engage in a similar undertaking?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kirsten. And I love that question, because in the end, the leadership at Trinity, which is one of our biggest, Trinity Health, which was one of Rogue Hire's biggest clients. And again, I had spent 3 years inside of that organization as an employee there. Their executives believed in the ROI, right? And so we brought the hard dollars forward. We were able to, position the investment as an engagement opportunity for our, staff to get involved in some of the staffing shortages that we have. Think about that. We've got, staffing shortages in healthcare, not enough nurses, not enough nurses. Well, here's a way for you to help us recruit, into your unit. Here's a way to bring fresh talent, into Trinity. And so I think that burning platform that existed inside of healthcare was certainly something that we leveraged, if you will, if that's the right word. I don't even know that's the right word, but to carry the initiative forward, right? Like if I didn't have that burning platform of not enough clinical talent, not enough nurses, would it have fell short? Maybe, maybe not. But I had a burning platform, and so I think I would be if I was in a TA leader's shoes right now, I was listening to this and I was, asking myself like, all right, I want to go for a run to invest in this. I'm only at, 10% of my external hires from referrals. I'm only at 15%. I want to become at least median. I got to invest in this. I know I need some things. I know I need some tech. I know I need some additional rewards budget. I would be thinking about what is my burning platform inside of my organization. What's that? What's in it for your executive, right? We talked about what's in it for the employee, but what's in it for your executive? What pain is that going to relieve if you achieve your objectives, right? And so if I get to 30% external hires coming from referrals, if I do that, right? If you invest in this and if I do that, what's the benefit back to you? And so for us, it was reduction in nursing agency, more higher quality talent coming in. And then in the end, us trying to find alternative sources for talent that we maybe haven't unearthed yet, right? And so it's like, hey, these markets that we're recruiting out of, they're finite, right? And so how do we recruit more out of some of that pond that's maybe we perceive to be fully fished, but it's maybe not. And so I those are the things that come to mind. But anytime you take something like this forward, I mean, you're dealing with CFOs, you're dealing with CEOs, you're dealing with Cs, right? And so you got to have the ROI nailed down, and you got to believe in it, right? And if you as a leader can't talk about it, can't talk about and evangelize the value of it, the leadership team just isn't going to buy it. They're not going to buy, in essence, what you're bringing forward. And, sometimes, using the word selling is a bad word, but it's not. You're selling an idea, right? And the idea is that, hey, there are companies that are at this level. There's no reason why we shouldn't be. Here's how we get there.
Wow, that was awesome. I almost don't want to end our conversation, but
We
I
can keep going.
do. I know, but I have to be aware of your time
No, you're fine.
and the listening audience. I got to stick to the time constraints that I was given.
Oh, you're
So
good.
before I let you go,
Sure.
where can we go to learn more about you, about Rogue Hire, and all you're doing with building
Yeah.
out
I hang out on LinkedIn,
ERPs?
and so I'm certainly out there. You can DM me. I host a podcast that right now is healthcare talent acquisition, HR leader centric. You can listen more about referral program and much more on the pod, TA in the trenches. but yeah, just hit me up with a DM out on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to engage.
Thank you so much once again.
Yes.
I've fully enjoyed our conversation and the carryover that you allow from TA Week. Speaking of, please join us next time for another robust conversation, a recap of another TA Week day right here on HR Gazette. Thank you.
Thank you, Keirsten.
Thanks for listening to the HR Chat Show. If you enjoyed this episode, why not subscribe and listen to some of the hundreds of episodes published by HR Gazette? And remember, for what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit hrgazette.com.